Hello you guys, and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, welcome. My name is Jordan. I am a professional figure skater and I'm currently working and living on board a cruise ship. I have been working on board for the past 6 years and it truly has been a dream job for me. So I always love talking about ship life and sharing my experience working on board. So today I'm going to be sharing my top 20 pros and cons about cruise ship life. I get asked all the time what it's really like to work on board, and while I am a performer on board, I thought it would be helpful to share some insight on what crew life is really like for those who work on a cruise ship. And if you're someone who is interested in ship life, maybe this video will help you decide whether or not it's something that you should try out. If you are interested in seeing what it's like to live on board a cruise ship, make sure to hit the subscribe button if you're not already, because I do post 2 videos every week sharing my travels and adventures all around the world. And if you want to keep up with me on a more day-to-day basis, you can follow me on Instagram or TikTok at Bauth. I'll have both of those linked down below. But without further ado, let's get on into it. As an optimist and a half glass full kind of girl, I want to start with the pros of working on board because there are truly so many benefits to ship life. So I've rounded up a list of 20 different pros and we're going to get right into it. Starting with the most obvious benefit, pro number 1 is free travel. Getting to work on board a cruise ship means that you get to travel to all different destinations around the world, whether it's in the Caribbean, in Europe, in Asia, Australia, truly all over the globe, and that is unbelievable. Travel can be so expensive, whether you're planning a vacation or even just a little mini weekend getaway. So getting to travel for free, and not just free, getting paid while you're traveling, is arguably the best pro about this job. If you're like me and you love to travel and you want to see the world, this is the best way to do it because you really do get to see so many beautiful places. As a rule, cruise ships do tend to go back to the same ports week to week. Of course, our itinerary can change and rotate depending on what ship you are and what its schedule is, but usually you visit a port more than one time, so you really can see that port quite a few times and really get a good feel for it. Pro number 2 is built-in housing and meals included. We do not have to pay rent while living on board, and we don't have to pay for a single meal, which really makes all the difference. As a rule, I would say rent cuts out a huge chunk of your paycheck month to month, so not having to pay for that is unbelievable. And same goes for meals. Food can add up really fast. You're not paying for groceries, so everything is sorted for us. You just show up, have breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack, coffee, tea, whatever you want, and it's included. Kind of building on that, pro number 3 is that you can save a lot of money. Because we really do not have expenses on board, or many of them, that means that we can save pretty much all of the money that we make while working on board because we're not spending it on those typical payments that you might have if you're living on land, such as a car payment, a mortgage or rent, electricity, water, gas, any of that we don't have to pay for. On average, I would say I save 95% of my paycheck throughout each contract. The next pro of this job is that you get to meet people from all over the world. That's not just people that you're working with day to day. You also get to meet guests from all over the world, which I think is a really unique experience. I truly don't think there's any other job that gives you that opportunity, and you really can learn so much from other people. I just think it's such a special experience, and it truly makes you realize at the core how we're all the same. You know, we might have different backgrounds and culturally, you might be very different from other people, but at the core, we're all just human, and I just think it's such a beautiful thing. Kind of building on the previous pro, my next advantage to working on a cruise ship is the tight-knit community within the crew. I don't really know how to explain it, but you really do get to know most people that are working on board. Of course, when you're on those mega ships, you might not know every single person. And of course, you don't know every single person super well, but you do tend to know familiar faces. And I don't know, it's just a really nice feeling to have that community, especially when you're so far away from home. And because of that, you really can lean on one another because you are all in the same situation. So a struggle that you might be going through, someone else could probably relate, and it's just a really comforting feeling. And you truly would be so surprised how quickly you can get close to somebody in such a short amount of time because we're living in the same spaces we work and we're around each other all the time. You really get to know a person fast. Like, you could feel like you've known a person for years within a month. I always say that one day on board really feels like a week at home on land. You truly will not understand this unless you are a crew member on board. Another pro to this job is that there are immense opportunities for career growth within the company. So no matter where you're working on board, there's always room to grow and to step up and get promoted into a new position. There is so much to learn on board, and you can definitely put yourself in a position to continue to grow and accelerate your career within the company. So there's definitely building blocks to step up in your position and really make a life career out of it. Another really great thing about working on board is that you have access to all different amenities. Of course, depending on your title, your position, and what your privileges are, this might vary, but we do still have access to onboard amenities such as a gym, the shops, restaurants, guest areas, bars, so on and so forth. Kind of going along with that, because we have access to these things, like for example, the gym, I'm not paying for a gym membership. I can just go to the gym, use the gym, and walk out. It's really great. Now, of course, when you're living on board, you need to find a balance of social life as well as work. So if you're gonna work hard, you gotta play hard. Luckily, they do offer a bunch of crew events and activities and parties for us. So these, of course, are crew-only events, and they are in the crew areas, so no guests are allowed to go, but it is a really, really great way to keep crew morale up. It's a great way to socialize. So they have all different sorts of activities, tournaments, like they've got ping pong tournaments, soccer tournament, basketball, like any sort of sporting activity. They even open up the slides sometimes to us in the evening. They always have a really nice spread of food for any sort of holiday. Also, they have holiday parties like a Halloween party, Christmas, New Year's, any sort of Independence Day of the crew on board. They always host some sort of party, which is really great. They even have bingo, paint night, but you get the idea. There's tons of activities for us, which is, I think, really important and a really fun way to spend your off time. Another reason that I really love working on board a cruise ship is that it really does allow for personal growth. I feel like I've learned so much about myself since working on board. I've grown as an individual tenfold. I've always been an independent person, but this has really pushed me to be even more independent, step outside of my comfort zone, open myself up to new experiences, and I've just learned a lot about myself and my adaptability to certain situations as well. So you can learn some really great life skills while working on board. Jumping back to the travel aspect of this job, we do get time to explore the ports, which is really great. So you can walk around, get off, and really see the area. Depending on your schedule and how late we're in port will determine how much time you have off in port. But as a performer myself, I do get ample time in the ports, which is really, really awesome. And I'm super grateful for it. And I try to make the most of every opportunity that I have to get off in port. Of course, I can't always get off the ship. And sometimes my schedule doesn't allow me to get off for as long as I want, or maybe I have to stay on board. But regardless, we do get that time in port to explore, which is really nice. Another pro to this job, because we are meeting people from all over the world, this opens us up to new cultures and even new languages. So you can learn a lot if you apply yourself and if you want to learn. I have been following my Duolingo plan since being on board this contract, and I'm currently learning Italian because obviously we're traveling to a lot of Italian ports. And I just think it's a really fun way to push myself and grow. But of course, if you have friends who speak other languages and you spend a lot of time around them, you can pick up some phrases in different languages, which can be very helpful. Now, when it comes to cruising, I get asked all the time if I get to take free cruises because I work on board. And while I don't get to take completely free cruises, I do have access to a family and friends discount, which means that my loved ones can cruise for a discounted rate, which is really awesome. This discount is only available after you've been working on board for over 6 months, but I've been able to, have my parents visit me and other family members visit me for a discounted rate, which is a huge, huge plus. Also, if I do want to cruise on another ship, I can put myself on a standby, which means if there are cabins still available the day of the sailing, that I can cruise for a discounted rate, which is also a humongous plus that I have not fully taken advantage of, but I hope to do so in the future. Working on board also gives you a really strong sense of community. Of course, you get close with the people that you work directly with, but you can also make really good connections and friends with people that are not even in your division or your department whatsoever. And it's just a really good feeling to know that you have people to lean on and to talk to if you're ever struggling with something, or just someone to have a good laugh with. I believe that we're always stronger in numbers and if we're united. So having that sense of community on board is a feeling unlike anything else. And I don't think it's a feeling that you would get in a traditional work environment. Another reason that I love this job so much is because it is such an adventurous and unique work experience, and it just opens your eyes up to so many different possibilities. It is truly a one-of-a-kind environment, and I don't even have anything to compare it to, really. I will say that this environment might not be for everyone. It definitely is not for everyone, but if you're adventurous, if you like to go with the flow, and you're open to something unique, this is truly one of a kind. Okay, this one is definitely a pro that I have learned. I'm still perfecting, but it is definitely a benefit to the job, is that you can learn to live minimally. I, as a rule, am not a minimalist. I'm not. I've tried. However, this job has taught me that I can live in a much more minimal way than I ever thought possible. You don't really need much to get by. You don't have the space for it, so you can get by with a lot less than what you really think you need. And because of that, whenever I come home from a contract, I get rid of so many things because I've lived months without even thinking about them. So the second I get home, I'm like, I know I don't need this. It has taught me to live in a much more minimal way, which I personally think is a plus. Because this is such an unconventional job, there's a lot that you can learn work-wise. You can learn to improve on time management. You can learn to become more flexible, quick on your feet, and also it definitely helps build teamwork, because you have to work with people who might have different viewpoints and might have different ideas of doing things. And because this work environment is so fast-paced and constantly changing, you need to be quick on your feet and be able to think fast, but as a team. And these, of course, are traits that I think are really beneficial to everyone, no matter where you decide to work or what you're doing in the future. These are skills that are really important to have. Kind of piggybacking off the previous pro, another huge benefit of this job is that it looks amazing on a resume. Some people do work on board until they retire, so this is their lifelong career. However, for many of us, it's not the only job that you will ever have. So of course you want something that will look good on a resume to get you future opportunities, and this job is definitely it. And you learn so many different skills while working on board that it definitely can set you up for success for future job opportunities. The next pro is something I get asked all the time, and it has to do with medical. So I am covered medically while working on board, and I am insured throughout my contracts. When I go home at the end of a contract, I'm no longer covered, but when I am on board for a contract, I can go and get medical assistance or coverage at no additional cost. So I'm completely looked after and taken care of for free, which is huge. We've got 2 pros left. Number 19 is that this job gives you the ability to travel to countries and places that you probably might not have otherwise seen. It really gives you the chance to see so much more of the world than you might expect. I feel like as humans, we all have a bucket list of places that we would love to see, but I've been able to see pretty much all of my bucket list destinations and then a bunch of other places that I didn't even consider that I ended up loving so much because of this job. So it's something that I will forever be grateful for, and to this day, I'm still dumbfounded by it. It's just insane. The fact that I was able to go to Iceland on a cruise ship, never in a million years would I have thought that'd be possible. And number 20, you can create endless lifelong memories while working on board. I still remember clear as day memories from my first contract 6 years ago, and it just brings me so much joy. It really is such an amazing experience, and you truly make some of the best memories of your life working on board. You can ask any single person who works on a cruise ship, they'll agree with this. Now that we have gone through all of the pros, I mean, there are more pros than just the ones that I've listed, but those are the 20s. We now need to talk about the cons of this job because, of course, like any job and like anything in life, there's always pros and cons. So con number 1 is that when you work on board, you have really long contracts. Of course, this might not be the case for every single person, but on average, most people who work on board are here for many months at a time. For me, My contract usually ranges from 7, 8, or 9 months long. So that means that you're on board working without going home for up to 9 months at a time, which can be really, really difficult. Con number 2, limited privacy. There are people everywhere, and most people are sharing a cabin. So, that doesn't leave you with much privacy. Definitely get used to it. You can make it work, but it is just not ideal. Kind of going along with that, if you are someone who does have to share a room and you have a roommate, it's kind of luck of the draw with that. You can have a roommate that's spectacular. You guys get along. You guys are on a good flow for, sleep schedule or work schedule. You can have like the best experience with a roommate, or you can have the worst experience with a roommate. I've been very fortunate in all of my contracts. I've been very, very lucky. I really don't have many stories to share, but believe me when I say people definitely do. You do have the opportunity to move cabins if you want, but of course that's not what anyone really wants to do. But of course, sometimes you don't have great luck in that department. Not only do you have limited privacy and your roommate might not be your favorite person ever, you also have a small shared living space. Again, this does not apply to the higher positions. They will have a larger room with more amenities and the room to themselves. But for myself personally, I do have to share a room, and these rooms are small. It's definitely smaller than what the average room size would be if you were living on land, is what I would expect. Maybe if you live in New York City, you have a studio that's tiny, but this room really is small and you are sharing it with someone else. So you just have to adjust to a smaller living space. On the plus side, you do live more minimally. However, it can feel a bit crammed because it is small. The next con to this job is the unpredictability of your work schedule. Things are constantly changing, and I mean constantly. Day to day, your schedule is going to be different, so you don't have like a super set routine. And on top of that, within the day, things could change. So because it's such a fast-paced environment and things can happen like this, you need to be able to be quick on your feet and adjust accordingly and just go with it. But of course, this isn't always ideal, especially if you're someone who really thrives on routine and structure. It is not the most structurally sound job, if you will. Next con, this one is something that I definitely deal with all the time, is that we have very limited Wi-Fi and no free internet access. So we do have to pay for our internet on board, which is less than ideal. This is something that I think almost every crew member wishes for. If we got free internet, that would make the world of a difference. And our internet is pretty expensive, so it's not always the easiest to make calls or if you just want to watch, I don't know, Netflix or YouTube or check emails, you will have to pay for internet. Also, because you're on a cruise ship, it might not be as fast as the Wi-Fi that you're used to at home or even like at a cafe or a restaurant. That being said, I am currently cruising around Europe, so I have internet access in the ports, and we're in port 6 out of 7 days of the week. So for me, this isn't too much of an issue, this contract, but other contracts, I definitely do struggle with this. Now, of course, like I said, we are away from home for many months on end. So we're really far away from friends and family, and that definitely can weigh on you after a while. I don't necessarily get homesick, but I do miss my friends and family back home. And it's not so simple to just go home in the middle of a contract unless we have an approved reason to go home for, say, a week or 2. You don't get to go home. You have to stay on board throughout the duration of your contract. So you definitely do miss the people that are important to you while you're away, and it's not so easy to see them. Another con is what I'd like to call, I guess, cabin fever, if you will. This job is a dream, of course, but think of almost like a floating town or village. So you see the same people all day, every day. You see the same spaces all day, every day. And if you are not really getting off the ship a ton, you can kind of feel this sort of cabin fever vibe. You can feel, I don't know what the word is. It can just be a bit overwhelming, and it can become a little bit stressful. On the plus side though, this is why it's really great to have a good community and a good group of friends working on board, because you can, support each other and help each other through pretty much anything. Moving on to the next con, this is something that I think is probably the hardest part about this job, is that it's really, really difficult to separate work and personal life, because it is intertwined. It truly is one in the same here. We're working here, but this is also our living space. So as much as you try to separate the two, they do kind of intertwine and mesh together, which is not the best. When you think of a job while working or living on land, you go to your job for the day, you clock out, you go home, and that's the end of it. It's separate. Here, it's not like that. Next on my list, staying healthy can be a bit more difficult on board. I am a performer, so I really need to prioritize my health and wellness, take care of myself, fuel myself properly. But when you are not cooking meals for yourself or buying groceries, you kind of just have to make the best choices for yourself based on what you're given. It's just a little bit more difficult when you are not fully in charge of it. Of course, you are the one deciding what you want to eat, if you want to exercise, so on and so forth. But there is an added obstacle when it's not fully up to you and you kind of just have to make the situation work. The next con on my list is that you can miss important life events at home. This is something that I'm finding really hard in the last probably year or two because I'm getting to that age where a lot of my friends are getting married and having babies. I'm missing out on a lot of these special life events. Of course, life keeps moving. I have a life to live here as well. And you can pick up right where you left off when you go home. But this is something that has definitely been in my mind more frequently these days. And it's something that can be really difficult when you're working on board because those are special moments that you wish you could be there for, but it definitely can be sad to miss out on those special moments and wish you were there. Another con is that it can be a bit repetitive, even though the schedule is kind of all over the place and it can constantly change. You do feel a bit of like Groundhog Day energy, especially around halfway through the contract. You can feel like, okay, I'm doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. So I find it to be really important to try and switch it up a little bit. You know, I love a routine, but I do think that variety is really good and it's almost necessary for us to maintain our well-being and happiness. Next on my list is that there's lots of rules to follow and you have a lot of responsibility on board. Of course, the rules are there for a reason. It's all for our safety and security at the end of the day, which of course is necessary and we all understand, but it is definitely just a different feeling than if you are completely on your own, living in an apartment in some town or city or whatever, in a house. We are all adults here, but we still need to listen to the rules and follow accordingly. Next one I wrote is noise and motion, but let me explain. So when you're working on board, of course, this is your living environment, but you can find times where there's a lot of excess noise and you can't really do anything about it. If you're trying to sleep and there's construction or maintenance going on outside your door, it's not great. Same with motion. If you are someone who gets seasick, you can definitely experience that if it is really rough seas. I don't personally get motion sickness, so I'm okay in that field, but definitely this is something that people can experience and it can make your job a little bit harder if you're not feeling the best from the motion. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind. Kind of piggybacking off the privacy situation, it is very difficult to find alone time because there are people everywhere all the time and you share a room. I really value time by myself. I love spending time with myself. I mean, the relationship you have with yourself is the most important one, no doubt about it. So I do think that it's important to make time for yourself and do things that make you really happy on your own. But it can be definitely challenging when you've got people literally every which way you look on the ship. However, I do try to, block out times in my days, or even I'll spend like one day a week completely by myself. I'll take myself for a walk on the jogging track. That's something that I like to do regularly, almost daily. I'll take my book and go read somewhere, maybe on the top deck, get some vitamin D and just listen to my music alone. I'll listen to a podcast. Like there's ways to find the time to be alone, but it just takes a little bit more effort. Another con to the job is that because it is such a close-knit community, which is a huge plus, there can definitely be drama on board. You live in close quarters, it's really a small space, and everyone knows everything. You can try to keep your business, but somehow it goes around the ship. The information spreads really fast on board. I'm talking like lightning speed. So that can be a little bit of a struggle and it can be a bit frustrating at times, but it's just something to keep in mind. And if you don't really have drama, then you're in the clear. Next con to the job is that you don't always have control over the itinerary that you're gonna be cruising on. So in my position, I can request certain ships, as I think other people can, but doesn't necessarily mean that you will end up on that ship. And if you want a specific itinerary, you might not always get it. You might end up with something different than what you were hoping for. And it is what it is. You just have to make the best of it, but you know, you can't always control it. Another thing is that you can definitely experience burnout because it is such a fast-paced environment. And I think everyone experiences burnout, but I definitely think because things are constantly going like 24/7, burnout is definitely more common on board. You just have to try to control it and take care of it and give yourself the time to rest and recover when you can. Aside from these contracts being really long, which is definitely difficult, I think it's almost harder to say goodbye to the friends that you make on board because these people truly become your family. You do everything with them. You work with them, you eat meals with them, you have a drink with them, you do activities with them, you get off in port with them. Like, you are with these people all the time and they become your friends and family in one, and then you have to say goodbye to them at the end of the contract, and it is so difficult, especially if they live on the other side of the world. As amazing as it is to have friends from all over the place, it sucks. At the end, when you have to say goodbye, it's like ripping your heart out. And it does get a little bit easier the longer that you work on board, the more years that you accumulate, but it's never easy. And the last con I have on my list is, I guess, FOMO of life, if you will. FOMO, for those of you who don't know, is the fear of missing out. So, you know, you've got so much going on here, so many benefits to this job, and so many things that people probably look at you and feel jealous of. But at the same time, while you're here, you can see that life is continuing at home, and you can definitely feel that FOMO at times, you know. As amazing as this job is, you can definitely be daydreaming about your future life or other things that you would like to accomplish if you were living on land and not working on a cruise ship. So it's that weird balance of, as much as you love what you're doing right now and you want to be in this environment, you also are still thinking about the other things that you would like to do in life as well. It's a really weird dynamic. I don't really know how to fully explain it, but you definitely do experience FOMO while having the most insane, amazing job. You just think about these things as well. There you have it, 20 pros and 20 cons of working on a cruise ship. I just did 20 and 20 to make it equal. But again, this is such a unique experience and lifestyle that I have loved for the past 6 years, and I truly would recommend to everyone. You really will learn so much about yourself. You will grow so much. You will have so many incredible once-in-a-lifetime experiences. And I think that it's something everyone should try if they have the opportunity to. You're never too old. I hope this was informative. If you're thinking about ship life, I hope this gave you more clarity one way or another if it's something that you want to go for. As always, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Comment down below which piece of information was the most surprising to you. And of course, if you're not already subscribed, make sure to do so for 2 uploads per week. But I love you guys to the moon and back. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.